Okay. A really quick review. So this is a story about a prophet. It's not a story of the prophet's words. It's about a prophet. And we're going to go with the idea that it's not a historical narrative, but that it's a parable using a historical figure. Because Jonah really did live and was a real person. It's kind of a satire and a comic book style. And a satire, just to remind ourselves, is aimed at not only telling you about some event that took place, but it's aimed at critiquing you, the reader, but getting you to laugh while they're doing it. That's satire. Think Saturday Night Live. Back, 50 years ago when it first came out, and it was really funny. It's not funny anymore, I don't think. And then it's comic book style, just with the idea, it's just everything is extreme. Everything is over the top, blown. The city is huge, the fish is huge. Jonah is hugely happy, he's hugely sad, it's crazy, it's extreme. And the other thing to remember is the fish is not the thing. What, Cheryl?
So you're coming from that. So are you saying then that this is just a story about a person, that it's not necessarily something that really happened?
I'm not real sure about that. But it's not, it's more, everything that I have read, and people go both ways, everything I've read said it's more of a parable that is being told, kind of like when Jesus told the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. We don't know that really happened. I hope that Nineveh, there was a time
Nineveh's got to be saved.
when Nineveh. So we're just gonna go with the story. We're not gonna get hung up with did it really happen? Did he really end up in the belly of a fish? Because then you can start thinking, well, anyway. So we're just gonna kind of go with the fish. Really is not the important part of the story, but there's other things. So verse 1 of Jonah says, "Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai." So Jonah in Hebrew means dove, and Amittai means faithfulness.
Dove means what?
Dove.
Dove.
Dove, son of faithfulness. And he was probably the most faithless character in the story that we're going to see. And it says, "Arise." So the word of the Lord, this is what the Lord said to him. "Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me." So, have you ever tried to start watching something like halfway through the season? Like one of these shows that builds on itself, and you get halfway and you think, I have no idea what's going on. So you need a backstory. So the backstory, we're supposed to know about Nineveh. The readers who read this when it first came out would know about Nineveh. They would know about Jonah, who appears one other time in the Old Testament. And he's the perfect person to be the main character. So the one other time that Jonah appears in the Old Testament is in 2 Kings chapter 14, verse 23 through 25. And it says, "In the 15th year of Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, began to reign in Samaria, and he reigned 41 years. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. He restored the border of Israel from Labo Hamath as far as the Sea of Arabah, according to the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, which he spoke by his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet who was from Gath Hepher." So, Jonah, this is kind of midway through the kingdom period after David. Jeroboam was very evil, probably one of the worst kings Israel had, and Jonah prophesied favorably towards him. Now, it was a prophecy through the Lord, but you can imagine later people who read this story who would say, "Oh, Jonah, he's that guy that prophesied favor over that really horrible king a long time ago." I mean, can't you just hear people on Facebook typing it in? Because in Amos 7, Amos actually reverses this. The people of Israel had gotten so bad that Yahweh took the land back away from them. So later biblical readers would know, I lost my place. He prophesied that Israel, so Jonah prophesied that Israel would increase its territory, and later biblical readers would know, they lost all that territory. So that's kind of Jonah, and now Jonah's being asked to go preach a message to Israel's most hated enemy. Nineveh was the capital of Assyria. They were probably the most brutal, oppressive, violent of all the ancient empires. They wiped out 10 of the tribes of Israel.
Wow.
Assyria. The general practice was to plunder a city, skin alive all the leaders of the city in front of everyone before they're deported back to Assyria. So in these words, in verse 2, God is depicted as this great king. He's looking over his realm. He sees all this oppression. He sees all this injustice of Nineveh, and he says, I'm done. That's enough. No more. So he's going to send a messenger, Dove, son of faithfulness. So then it says in verse 3, but Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord. So Jonah runs. It says he went down to Joppa, he got on a ship, and he sailed for Tarshish. So what was Jonah's ultimate aim here? What does it say? Why was he fleeing?
To get away from the Lord.
He was fleeing the presence of the Lord. If we had a map, so Jonah's in Israel. Nineveh is east. Where does Jonah go? He goes west. Tarshish was the edge of the known world. It would be like us saying we're going to Timbuktu. It was as far away from Nineveh as you could get, humanly possible, in the opposite direction. And we're thinking, well, that's crazy, because he's a man of God. He is a prophet. Can you flee from the Lord? No. So something's going on inside of him that scrambled his view of reality. So everything in this story is rich and crazy and upside down, and it raises the question of why. Jonah is the only prophet in the Bible who runs from God. Think about it. He's the only one. Peter denied Jesus, but he didn't run from him. I mean, he was still there. So why do you think he is running from God?
Because he don't do what he's told.
So he is asked to go march into the capital city of the biggest, baddest empire on the earth at that time and preach against it. It would probably be like somebody parachuting during World War II into Berlin and marching and preaching against Hitler. Just so we think he's scared. Okay? God's asked him to do something, and he's scared and he doesn't want to do it, so he's running away. Guess what? That's not why he's running away. If you look in chapter 4, verses 1 through 3, so he's preached this 5-word sermon, and we're going to talk about that, and everyone in Nineveh, including the cows, have repented, including the animals.
How do you know what animals?
Well, I mean, they put sackcloth and ashes on all the animals, and they all fasted and all of this stuff. So
feed the animals.
he's preached a 5-word sermon. Everyone's repented. Chapter 4, verse 1 through 3 says, but it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was angry. And he prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord, is not this what I said when I was yet in my country? That is why I made haste to flee to Tarshish, for I knew that you are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and relenting from disaster. Therefore, Now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live. He was not scared. He was angry. He was angry at the success of his sermon. He knew when he went that somehow Yahweh would find a way to bring his grace and his mercy to these people through their repentance. He knew that somehow this was going to have a happy ending, and he doesn't want a happy ending for the people of Nineveh. So what's really going on here is Jonah has this plan for how his life is going to go. He has this vision for how his prophetic career is going to go, and it does not include going to Nineveh. It does not include being the prophet that brings forgiveness and life and repentance to the most hated enemies of your people, because that's just not going to go over well with people back home. And he knows perfectly well that Yahweh loves to show mercy. I mean, he knows that. And he knows the Ninevites are going to find mercy, and this doesn't fit into his vision of his life, so he runs away to Tarshish. So how this book begins and what we're going to look at, and like I said, we're also going to look at people who were called who went, just to see the difference. But it's just a very profound exploration of disobedience, this part of it. Y'all, obedience isn't a positive idea in our culture. You know, you can't tell me what to do. You know, I mean, I had a kid one time who said, you can't, I said, we're going to stop talking about that. And her comment was, you can't tell me what I can and cannot talk about in your classroom.
Ooh.
And I said, oh, but baby, I can. And let me explain why. Because when you walk in that door, this is no longer a democracy. This room right here is a monarchy, and I'm the queen, and I get to say what you can and cannot talk about. So, but it's not, you know, don't tell me what to do. You can't make me. I don't have to do that. It's not a positive idea in our culture. God is commanding Jonah to go preach to the city of Nineveh, and y'all, he could have done this in so many different ways. He could have, like Mount Sinai, he could have clouds and thunder and lightning and a voice from heaven, turn from your wicked ways. He could have done that, but guess what? He almost never works that way in the Bible. He did at Sinai. Y'all, the rest of the time, you know, and a lot of us may think, I just don't think I would do it that way. The way God works is he works through us. He chooses to work through his covenant people. And so what's actually happening in the story that we're going to see is that Jonah's being invited to step into a story that's a whole lot bigger and more risky and broader than anything he's ever signed up for. Jonah has a vision. Here's what my life is going to look like. Here's what my prophetic career. Here's that whole God thing. God clearly is calling me in that direction, and I'm just not interested. Y'all, and we are the same way. Mm-hmm. We all get competing views of what our life should be. And Jesus comes into the picture and he says, follow me. And we think what we're doing is life, but it's actually not. It's a competing vision of a life. When God calls his people, the first thing that we're going to be confronted with is, am I going to settle for the path of life that I'm on and what I call life, or am I going to entertain this new life? I mean, that's a big question. And here's the irony in all of this. We can convince ourselves that just being in a church community means we're doing okay. So I'm going to church on Sunday mornings. I'm making it sometimes on Wednesday nights. I'm kind of doing what I need to do. But then there's this clear, glaring area of our life where we know that we're being called to grow. We're being called to change. And somehow, especially religious people, we compartmentalize that. We say, yeah, I'll be at church on Sunday, Jesus, but I'm not going to do this. You know, I'll pray for that person, but don't ask me to go talk to him or her about who you are. But I'll be at church on Sunday, and won't you be happy with me then? I mean, that's what we do. Jonah is very religious. He's a prophet. I mean, he is a prophet. But his vision of life is challenged, and he's now running to Tarshish. And he thinks he's running for his life. He thinks God is ruining my party, but the tragedy is he's actually running from his life. He is missing out on an opportunity to participate in a movement of God's grace that is on a greater scope than anybody had ever known. The city of Nineveh. I mean, it was the biggest city at the time. I mean, it just was huge. He's going to miss out on being a part of that and enjoying it because he won't give up his little bitty vision of life. He's going to miss out on that. They have that FOMO, fear of missing out. And that's Jonah. But here's the thing. When you got kids who are walking, you teach your children to come when they're called. Stop what you're doing, stop and come to me. Because, I mean, they're walking on you're walking on a busy sidewalk, and they see something and they take off, and you want them to stop. When I was growing up, my dad could whistle. You could hear it all over the neighborhood. And in the summer, and y'all remember this, we would get up in the morning and go outside, and we would be gone all day.
Yeah.
My mother never worried about, but when she was ready for us to come home, if my dad was not flying on a trip, he would stand at the door and whistle. And we stopped everything we were doing and went home. We were so trained. Here's how trained we were. When my dad retired from Delta, his last flight, he was flying to Dublin and then flying to Paris and London, then back to Dublin, then back to Atlanta. So he bought all of us full fare tickets, and he flew us, and we flew to Dublin, and then a guy from the pilot's office in Atlanta flew the rest of his trip, and we spent a week in Ireland as a family. So anyway, it was real cool. Yeah. But we were sightseeing in Dublin, just walking around, and my mom saw something. She wanted to get a picture of everybody, and of course we're all kind of scattered, and so she got my dad to whistle. Well, the four of us immediately stopped and turned around because we recognized that whistle. So when we do that with our children, we only have their best interest at heart. We just want them. We want them to go see that dog that they want to see, but we want to keep them safe. And a lot of times they will look at us, you're ruining my party by not letting me do this. But we know if you run out in that street, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. That's exactly what's happening with Jonah. God wants Jonah to participate in this amazing event of his grace and mercy coming to people that you would never expect. And he's so fixated on his own little deal that he can't see it. In Matthew chapter 4, verse 18 through 22, it says, while walking by the Sea of Galilee, Jesus saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, in the boat with Zebedee their father, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. So Jesus turns up and he says 10 words. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And he takes these four brothers and he catapults these brothers from the shores of Galilee to the ends of the earth, from anonymity into unimaginable influence, from predictable stability into life's perpetual pilgrimage. And this is the situation every single one of us finds ourselves in every single day when we face the decision, am I going to follow Jesus or not? The call to follow Jesus hasn't changed. He remains the great disruptor. Don't you love that phrase? I read that in a devotion. Challenging me to trade what I know for the great unknown and all that I own for a greater cause. That's kind of what God was calling Jonah to do. And in a way, for us today on this side of the cross, this whole vision of obedience and what's happening in the book of Jonah can be summed up at the cross. Because when Jesus calls us to follow him, he's calling us to see that he was the faithful covenant partner of God, the human being that none of us ever was or ever will be this side of his return. And he lived for us in a way that we can never live. And he died to absorb the cumulative weight of the horrible, stupid decisions that we make when we run from life. When we run according to our vision of the good life. And in his mercy and in his love, he conquered it by rising from the dead so that he could offer us life and grace and forgiveness. So when we come to Jesus, a death has to take place. And that's a death to our vision of what we think the good life is. We've got to let it die in faith that what Jesus is inviting us into is so much richer, a so much richer form of life than we could ever imagine. He calls us to abundant life, to life that is so rooted in his love for us that I see he only has goodwill for us, and that when he tells us to stop and turn around and come his way, he only has my best in mind and our best in mind. Becoming a Christian and being a Christian involves letting my vision of what my life is about die. My little story is not at the center of it. I am now a bit player in the story of Jesus who's at work in the world and inviting me to be a part of it. So, this week, find some time to just sit with these first 3 verses of Jonah. Sit with what they say to you about your life and obedience. Some areas of your life you may be doing good, but I bet there are some areas, no matter how small, where you're ready to book it to Tarshish. And Jesus is not welcome to come with you. So if we want to experience the abundant life that Jesus offers, we have to let those things go. We have to stop running. We have to ask Jesus to let that part, that issue, whatever it is, we have to let it die with him at the cross and allow him to speak his life to us in his grace. If there's anything about the character of God revealed in the story of Jonah, it's one of extravagant mercy and grace. So, do y'all have anything?
I have a question.
Okay.
And this comes from my religious background, which is different from all of y'all's. So okay. But I was taught that the definition of a parable is a story that may be true or may not be true, but could be true. Is that, if that's the case, then all of the things that you would say, like a person couldn't live in the belly of a fish, just is ridiculous, because if it could be true, whether it happened or not, it could have.
I think the definition of a parable I had was a story that teaches something.
An earthly story.
An earthly story.
Yeah, if it was that. But it was all about, if it wasn't something that actually happened, it could have, that everything in it is possible.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I don't know.
With God, all things are possible.
Well, I don't know, but I'm gonna find out.
Huh?
I'm gonna research that this week.
Okay, because I mean.
Well, I was just trying to think of, like, Jesus is the great storyteller, parable person. I was trying to think of some of his parables.
And he says, I was telling you a parable. I mean, they are specifically told in many cases.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether it was every one or not, but anyway. But that was the one thing that has stuck out to me with a parable, is that if whether it was true or not, it could have been, because he didn't use impossible situations to teach.
Yeah.
things.
Well, and I don't know if somebody could
Oh, well, there have
Living-
been situations
living
where
in the
people
belly
have
of a
been
fish.
cut up, fish have been cut up and there's a living person inside. I mean,
Yeah.
that's happened,
So, I mean, it could be.
yeah.
It could be. I know that when I was reading this, it talked about that both of the views are held by traditional Orthodox Christian.
Right,
You
and
know,
I wouldn't
it's not
argue whether
it's not-
it was or wasn't.
yeah,
But I will argue that it could be.
it could be. Oh, it could.
That's my
It
only
could.
point.
And I think the thing that has struck me when I was reading this, studying this the first time was that sometimes I can get so fixated on this part of a story that I
Yeah.
miss the whole point.
Yeah, and
And I
that's very
think
true.
that's a lot of what has happened with Jonah is we get so fixated. So the thing, before I study this, the thing that I knew about Jonah in the whale, and he
Yeah.
was running because he was scared. And usually you didn't even get to like children's books that have the story of Jonah. They don't even have chapter 4 is not included.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
Jonah gets angry at God and he chews God out. He chews God out for being gracious and merciful.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have
He
to
was
just
like that.
figure, I don't
And
know.
have we gotta go? Because
No, we're fine.
I was gonna tell you that, it's been no, it's not.
Oh.
A couple of months ago, I just have started, as I'm going through, there's some of these, things that I don't watch on TV that some